Hello out there and welcome to Public Conscience. This is the anti-corruption program produced by the Progressive Impact Organization for Community Development, PRIMOC. PRIMOC is a civil society group with a mandate to promote good governance, participation, and accountability in Nigeria. I am Adaobi Obiabumo and I'm with Chidozie Obunaya.
Welcome to the program. PRIMORG is spelled P-R-I-M-O-R-G.
On Public Conscience on Radio, we seek to evolve a corruption-free society through the amplification of corruption stories reported by our partner media organizations and drawing citizens and government attention for democratic actions against it. We also promote integrity by focusing on rare cases of the display of honesty by public and private individuals in the course of their normal activities. This program is supported by the MacArthur Foundation.
Today we will be looking at yet another case of suspicious award of contracts by the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency, NPHCDA, in the heat of the COVID-19 pandemic last year.
The COVID-19 pandemic took the whole country, the whole world by storm in late 2019 when it started in China. It got to Nigeria in February 2020, sparking serious health emergency spending by different government agencies. One of such government agencies that had a lot of procurement to make and contracts to award is the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency, whose award of 15 contracts to a single firm raised suspicion due to dubious allocation of funds on contracts and services.
On today's program, you will hear how an agency of the government seemingly took advantage of the COVID-19 emergency procurement process to award questionable contracts.
You will also hear from the media organization that took the pain to investigate and publish the award of contracts by the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency worth over 400 million naira to battle the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020.
We invited the management of National Primary Healthcare Development Agency. We are hoping that they will oblige us.
And I can assure you that today's discussion affects you and I, because when public funds are misappropriated through procurement or any other means, you and I suffer for it directly or indirectly. Are you bothered that contract frauds appear to have become a norm in the public sector? Do you know that procurement fraud is stifling Nigerians' growth and worsening poverty? And how much effect do you think corruption has on COVID-19 spending in Nigeria?
Be ready to join us through phone and text messages in the course of the conversation. The WhatsApp phone line to send your message is 09022656167, and that is 09022656167. Please indicate your name and your location when sending your message. This is for messages only.
Please begin to send your messages as soon as possible to 0902-265-6167. That is 0902-265-6167. The numbers to call will be given shortly.
A recent investigative report published by the International Center for Investigative Reporting, ICIR, has revealed that National Primary Healthcare Development Agency, without justification, awarded 15 contracts worth over 444 million naira to one firm. These 15 contracts unfortunately lacked detailed specifications, award dates, and completion dates.
It is instructive to understand that the firm that got the 15 contracts did not undergo the normal open competitive procurement process because the Bureau of Public Procurement had approved emergency procurement due to the pandemic. But it was shocking to find out that contracts on flip charts, production and supply of COVID-19 training manuals gulped about 228 million naira.
Quite a lot, Adobe. National Primary Healthcare Development Agency also failed to honor the Freedom of Information (FOI) request, where they were asked to provide accurate details of the procurement.
Procurement fraud has become a recurring decimal, And in May, the Chartered Institute of Forensic and Fraud Examiners of Nigeria revealed that Nigeria loses 300 billion naira annually to procurement frauds.
I want to stress that we invited the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency to join us in the program, but up until now, we did not get any response or assurance that they will be here.
But joining us to explain better is one of ICIR reporters, Amos Abbas. You're welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Amos Abba, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Also here with us is the coordinator, Media Advocacy West Africa Foundation, Audu Liberty Oseni. You're welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
We'll start today's conversation with Amos Abba, the reporter with the ICIR. Could you give us an overview of the report and why the ICIR went into COVID-19 investigation?
I think at the ICIR, our brand of journalism is actually to curate history. And what that means simply is that we are going to be identifying issues affecting the country. So hoping that in the archives of history we'll be able to identify active players and actors who played different roles in the history of the nation. And so it was a moral duty or an obligation for us to say, okay, we are not really over the COVID-19 pandemic, but I think we should still go back and see who were active players in handling funds that was supposed to be used in managing COVID-19. And that was one of the main reasons why we still went back to assess records. So we spotlighted, it isn't actually the first time that we are looking at that agency of government, the NPHCDA, but we spotlighted another red flag. The agency of government awarded 15 contracts to just one firm, Marvelous Mike Printing Press Limited, and the worth of contract was about 444 million to be exact when we did our calculations. And we're wondering how come, what do they really do? And obviously we found out discrepancies. We found out they awarded about 288 million naira for flip charts. It means that flip chart is just a stationary item and just a small board.
Where did you get this information from?
It's actually available on Nokopo. It's the Nigerian Open Contracting Portal. It's a portal that procurement details.
Nokopo by the BPP.
Yes. So it has procurement details of different agencies on that platform.
Okay, from what you just said, they procured flip charts.
Yes.
Were they specific as the details of the procurement? Now, how many flip charts were procured?
That's the amazing part. We understand at the height of the pandemic that they bypassed a competitive bidding process. But a contract will have specific details. For instance, it must have a unique contract number so that we can be able to identify the contract and trace it. It didn't have that. It didn't have specification of the number of flip charts that were bought. And some very obvious details were also missing. So the only thing I think and that was specific in that contract was about the duration of time it took to complete the contract, which was 2 days.
2 days?
Yes.
Okay, let's talk about the specifics now.
Yes.
Now we are talking about it. Share with us the suspicious and unbelievable contracts awarded in the investigation.
Okay, they allocated about 138, I am not specific about that figure, million naira for printing training manuals for COVID-19, is it preparedness? So it's a training manual, just a booklet, and we're wondering how much is a single copy of that material.
But did the training take place?
We were not able to really know if that training took place.
No one monitored.
Because they didn't reply our FOI request. It wasn't honored, so there was no way we could really ascertain if that training really took place or not.
Now, the training manual, is it for the whole country? Where did it cover? Like?
The details was not stated. So it was when we reached out to them to get a confirmation on what was really the size of the manual you printed, where did the training take place, but unfortunately we didn't get a response from them.
Quite unfortunate. Let's switch our attention.
Training manual for 288 million naira. Adobe. That's quite a very interesting training manual.
Maybe they trained everybody in Nigeria, or there are official cases of procurement malfeasance.
Well, let me first of all thank International Center for Investigative Reporting. They are doing a fantastic job. But you see, at Mara Foundation, I've got to assess grants to investigate COVID-19 procurement, and we focus on Nigerian Center for Disease Control. I make bold to say that it's all about racketeering. It's unfortunate, right? And you see, people, the money as we speak today. I have a document on our table from the Federal Ministry of Finance. You see, for instance, the Ministry of Agriculture spent about 2.7 billion. 1.78 billion for clearing of for clearing of farm land, and they say it's the COVID-19 post intervention program. With National Council of Women, National Council of Women under the Ministry of Women Affairs.
So you're not surprised? That
I am not surprised, because for me, really, it's a whole lot of racketeering. People just came, COVID-19 gave, and that's the truth is, when you put, and that's why I feel for him, when you put freedom of information for these people, they are not going to answer, right? And even if they answer, ask them. They should give you bank statements of how the money, how they deposit, how they transfer the money to the company that they procured. Ask them for procurement processes and reports, the tender bill, showing how the contractors were selected. You won't get to hear from anybody. So you see the impunity, you see a lot of corruption in the conflict and in the COVID-19 issue. And the last question you were asking, say, why did we not even make progress? One of the reasons we did not make progress, apart from the corruption, Nigerian state failed in the area of communication. There wasn't effective communication, and that affected people's belief. As we speak today, some Nigerians do not believe that COVID-19 exists.
In terms of communication, I understand for the FCT, there are lots of massive campaigns. Even on this station, we had Dr. Halima and her team. They moved from one radio station to the other, sensitizing the citizens on COVID-19. So would you say that there was not much sensitization and communication to the team?
Now, as a strategic communication expert, I tell you, they didn't do enough. You can't be having a conversation. What was communication designed for the rural people?
If many Nigerians are saying there's nothing like COVID-19.
Yeah.
So where did they get it from? It's also a communication channel that told them there's something called COVID-19 and tell them don't believe in it.
Now,
I think
in 2020, we were supported by OSIWA to carry out COVID-19 reports on impact of COVID-19 on the local economy. And we covered 12 communities in Nasarawa State and in Abuja. Now, most community persons, they come to realize, they come to tell you that COVID-19 is sickness for the rich. As a matter of fact, they even tell you that it's a disease sent in a collaboration with the Western world to steal public funds, using public health as a cover. However,
that's misinformation.
That's what I'm saying. That's misinformation. But in the government campaign and communication strategy, there wasn't adequate attention. What they did was to come to Abuja and go to one radio station to another. Even during the time of COVID-19, the special tax fund task force. What they were doing is that they were holding press conference in Abuja. So how do you factor the people in the communities? What is the effective communication plan to get them to be part of the communication design? But what happens most is that there are stages of communication, and we ask yourself, what is the trusted means of communication in these communities? Who do they trust most? How did the government have to get there? You don't just go to radio station and talk to Abuja people.
Let's get to corruption. The focus of today's discussion is
yes,
corruption
because
in the COVID-19.
I don't think it seems like the BPP oversees some of this procurement process, but in an emergency situation, there are some waivers for those processes to go through. So I'm coming back to Amos, because what was their role? That that they step down on procurement protocols or the process doesn't mean they should not go through checking. If they uploaded the date, they gave the correct completion date, and some of this little information that is missing in your report.
Yes. The BPP's role is, unfortunately, it's they had I would describe it as, should I say, nonchalant, because it's usually unheard of. If you're going to bypass an open bidding process in requiring a company to participate in a government project, I think there are some things that should not be skipped. Basic things that should not be skipped. Award dates, for
Let
example.
me jump in there.
Yes.
I know that last year the BPP came up with a guideline for COVID-19 procurement.
Yes.
So I wouldn't know if these other companies also failed or they did not meet up with the procurement
Of
guideline.
course, Marvelous Mike Press failed in meeting with any of those details, because on the Nokopo portal, some agencies of government met the same criteria that they failed to meet. And imagine they were awarded 15 separate contracts.
And that's a red
individual.
flag for
Yes, of course. So it's quite unfortunate that the BPP didn't do their job properly.
But could
in
it be
assessing the
that
company.
the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency, they trust this particular company so much, they've done business with them, they are confident that they would deliver, which was why they awarded 15 contracts to just one company?
Unfortunately, I don't think that trust will exist in such a context, because you are a government of agency and you ought to be accountable. So, and you should keep records. So, for instance, each of the 15 contracts never had a unique contract number. So, it means that going forward, we want to be able to track the existence of that contract. The day those details are taken down from Nokopo, it means they never existed, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, that we are talking about is very, very hard for us to take. But let me get to Awuju, who will tell us about, looking at the report, how bothered should we be as a nation, and how can more Nigerians in the public service be encouraged to stand upright? Awuju.
But before you respond to that, let me quickly ask you, why is procurement fraud in the public sector growing uncontainably by the day?
Good. Because one of the places that Nigerian states have been looted dry is procurement process, where the public servants, the civil servant, actually make the state resources is on the procurement process. And that's why it is difficult to get them to do the right thing. And you ask him, was there waiver? Of course, if there was waiver, no waiver stops government agency from accountability. Yes, you have gotten waiver, but we want to see, show us how we transfer the money. As a matter of fact, Section 58 of the Procurement Act 2007 makes it 5 to 10 years imprisonment for any public office or any government agency to award contract without following the due process. Section 38 of Fiscal Responsibility Act makes it an offense for you to award contract without following the due process. Section 10 of the Freedom of Information Act mandates public office to keep record of information and make it available to anybody that wants it. But these guys are not interested because of impunity. So whether we like it or not, because of deep-rooted corruption, and again, let me say that if ICRI had gone ahead to meet with Corporate Affairs Commission to file a report asking for the status of that company, you will be shocked to find out who are the directors of that company. Right. Now, we have seen a situation, currently we are doing a report on NDDC, a company that's a poultry farming company, got a contract of 1.6 billion to construct a road.
It's that in their article of association.
So you see the level of network of fraud. So the civil, to your question, it is difficult. It is difficult to get the civil servant to obey the procurement process because of vested interest. And until we begin to make example of people who breach Nigerian law, because there are laws. We have Procurement Act. We have Fiscal Responsibility Act. We have even FOI Act. These are laws that are made to ensure transparency and accountability in the way government business are being conducted. But these laws are not being obeyed. People just feel that they don't even exist. In short, they are even lucky that they responded to them. There are some MDAs, agencies that won't talk to you. They will tell you you can do anything you want to do.
And that's where the impunity comes from.
And that's where the impunity comes from.
Deep-rooted corruption, impunity, and vested interests could be some of the challenges why some of these agencies are not transparent when it comes to deal with procurement. And over time, we've had different conversations saying if we are able to tackle procurement and get the agencies to be transparent, perhaps we would have handled corruption by 1% or 10%.
It's not by 1%. We're going to handle big corruption in public sector.
Because if we are losing 300 billion yearly, it's a lot to take care of. A lot of things we are.
In 2015,
and
when I was investigative reporter with Premium Times, the former SDGs constructed a single borehole in Guaripa at the price of 154 million.
Procurement.
Yes.
Contract award. Okay, let's get the person who is listening to us at the other end of the dial to react to the conversation. Are you bothered? Perhaps you're one of the contractors. Why do we have this procurement fraud going on? You could share your experience with us. You might not want to give us your real name if you're one of the contractors. We need to understand what happens in the procurement process.
And I must quickly remind us that you can get social with us. Follow us on our social media platforms at Official Primorg, and Primorg is spelled Primorg. Remember that we are streaming live on Facebook at Official Primorg.
And remember that this program is interactive. The WhatsApp phone line to send your message to is 0902-265-6167. 0902-265-6167. Are you bothered that contract frauds happen? Or if you're watching via Facebook, you could drop a line or two and we will take your messages. We want you to react to the issues we're discussing today. And how much effect do you think corruption has on COVID-19 spending in Nigeria? So let's get back to my guest in the studio, Amos Abba. Okay, you've said that the National Primary Healthcare Agency did not respond to your FOI request. Let me take this call.
Okay.
Hello?
Hello.
Could you turn down the volume on your radio set?
Yes, it's down.
Thank you. Your name and where you're calling from?
My name is Kasi Umar. I'm calling from Guarimpa.
Okay, let's hear you.
Sorry?
Go ahead, let's hear you.
Yes, my contribution, when we talk about contracts and procurement and corruption, it is already systematic in the government and even the private sector. People that are ready and willing to do the right thing, people that have the capacity to do the right thing are not given the opportunity to be the contractor. Those in government, those that are interested in corruption have created some property companies is rather unfortunate. The government is aware, the government is take action. Private companies that undertake contracts are not even interested in drilling in dirty water, because it is just out of morality for a human being to go for a contract of 10 million and then receive a payment of about 200 million. What kind of human being?
Okay.
Forward in this country, we know exactly and precisely what to do. Those in position of power have created unnecessary companies that are being used to siphon the money. This is as simple as that.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your contribution.
All right, Amos,
Yes.
your report says the National Primary Health Care Development Agency refused to respond to your FOI request.
Yes.
Tell us more about that.
It's a familiar problem, especially when working with government agencies. They never, or they have a poor record of responding to FOI requests. I think it's something we've been battling with for quite a long while now. Unfortunately, it's not been resolved. But the problem is this: is that action has not been taken against agencies that fail to comply with the FOI Act, which is a serious problem.
I mean, I don't have the constitution with me right here.
Yes.
But I don't know what should be the punishment for not responding to FOI request, because it's a law.
Yes. Unfortunately, it's not quite spelled out in black and white.
Okay.
Yes. They have the law creates a caveat. So when they don't respond to an FOI request, nothing happens virtually. From my experience so far, I think nothing really happens to them. So it's
they can't be taken to court.
But
Nobody's held account. You can sue.
Yes, there have been cases where I think there was a particular case where we took my agency, the ICIR, and a couple of other agencies, organizations, took them to court. Took some agencies to court. Unfortunately, the judge said they had the right not to withhold the information we're asking for.
So
the law.
information we are supposed to
Publicly accessible information we ought to have access to.
All right. You want to respond to that?
Well, Freedom of Information Act provides for a fine of 500,000 if you are convicted or if you are found guilty of refusing to respond to FOI request. But the challenge is somebody that have struck a deal that fetched millions.
Worth over 150 million.
What's 500,000? And Section 8 of the Freedom of Information Act gives agencies the opportunity or the right or the authority to demand for money from you for demanding
So you
a
pay
request.
for information.
Now, some agencies will ask you to pay 5,000. Some will tell you to pay 10,000. Some will tell you to pay 20,000, and they will make the payment process very difficult to get you frustrated. So, in essence, the Freedom of Information Act ought to be reviewed to make a reasonable punishment for refusal to disclosure and capture open contract system that will reflect the reality, because 500,000 is nothing compared to the
millions involved.
But also we can also begin to leverage on Public Procurement Act, which makes it 5 to 10 years imprisonment for abuse. Section 58 stipulates clearly when you abuse procurement process, you can be sued. But the challenge is that the only person that can sue on that is the Attorney General of the Federation, if he's not interested.
That's where we have a lot of we need a lot of political will to be just forget about whatever and do the job. If you can focus and do the job without looking at whether the person involved is a party man
Yeah.
or an ally. I know we have a
Okay,
message.
we have a message here from Taiwo, and it says, good morning. I want to appreciate the management of Primark for always creating the platform for Nigerians to be enlightened. Thank you so much for that. It is unfortunate that the anti-corruption agencies are waiting for a formal petition from who? Nigerians now understand why there was an infighting in the Ministry of Health between the minister and the executive secretary of the agency. Ditto for other ministries. Please beam your searchlight on the Federal Capital Territory. Thank you so much, Taiwo, for your contribution on the program this morning. Beam our searchlights on the FCT. Amos.
I was telling us that. And as well, I would do. Your organization is also into investigations.
Investigation is expensive. People don't know.
Quite expensive and it takes time. But
Yeah,
in your earlier submission, you did rope in the private sector into the systemic corruption that goes on in the procurement process.
Yeah.
And one of the callers did say that some of these agencies do not, some of the contractors, because of the systemic corruption, would not want to bid because they know what happens. So some of these agencies and their directors use their own contracts, their own company to award contracts. So there's been this conversation of corruption in the procurement process in the public sector. It does not happen without the connivance of the private sector. Do we then begin to beam our searchlights also in the private sector, not just the public sector?
Okay, this also takes us the conversation of beneficial ownership. You get? Sometimes these guys register companies that belong to them. Sometimes they even register company with pseudonyms. Right. So you award when you get, I don't know if you apply to get the company statute from CSC. You see companies registered as a product, maybe as a poultry, like the example I've given, like the NDDC project we are working on, a company that was registered as a website developer, website and website design, got a contract of about 1.2 billion for road construction. You get?
Should that fly in the first place?
So now you ask yourself, how did they do? Now what happens is that because they already registered, there's a cartel. Because of the contrary cartel, they already knew who they would give.
So it's not transparent.
It's not. There's no transparent. If it's a transparent thing, there is no. At the first instant, you didn't even qualify because you need to be qualified.
But another point would be: is there a track record that this company that registered as a ICT company has now changed into doing constructing roads?
If you do that, you need to go back to the CSC
and update your records.
and update, because what you registered to do this, and you have started doing this. You need to demonstrate the capacity and the history, because this job is for professional and competency. So there's no way you can just register to design a website, all of a sudden you are constructing road. It doesn't happen.
And when corruption is involved, many things can be pushed aside.
I heard recently that one of the challenges of fighting corruption is corruption itself. You've heard the saying that when you try to fight corruption fights back. But let's focus on the topic again, dealing with corruption in the procurement process and the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency. Okay, back to Amos Abba.
Yes.
What are or were the other challenges ICIR, the organization, faced during the investigation, and how much do you think corruption has affected Nigeria's COVID-19 spending?
I think COVID-19 spending, corruption was an endemic thing that actually derailed Nigeria's fight against COVID-19, because contract fraud ate deep into the finances used in fighting COVID-19. So I would say it's, I'm being conservative actually. 50% of amount allocated for fighting COVID-19 lined up the personal pockets of public office holders. especially those in the government agencies.
Any history on any investigation around this?
Yeah, this is my own opinion with regards to
Okay.
that. Actually, reason is that from previous reports we had carried out, significantly, there was no agency of government that were exempt from procurement fraud.
I know you did a report sometime last year on
Yes.
thermometer.
Yes, and it's still from this same NPHCDA.
Yes, they featured in that report. I
Exactly,
remember.
yes. And there were several reports also. Several reports. We did lots of reports on different agencies that were actually mentioning procurement fraud with regards to COVID-19 spending. But back to the challenges that we faced in doing the story, it's actually a peculiar challenge with information, access to information, access to the company involved in carrying out the contract, not getting to speak to us. And that's also a major challenge. Not getting, apart from details on the COPO, we could not get information also from the BPP. They didn't give us access to any information with regards to companies that the company we were looking into. They didn't give us any information. I think hoarding information was actually a big problem for us with regards to investigation.
We are talking about transparency. There could never be a time you have accountability without being transparent to the people. It's a very big minus for us.
Some have also said that we have more people being transparent, but accountability is a challenge.
It's a challenge.
Transparency doesn't translate to accountability. You can be transparent, but you are not accountable. So where the problem lies is accountability. Yes, 50 billion have been sent to Ministry of Health, published on the website. That is transparency.
Partial transparency.
Now, where the problem lies, the accountability. What did you
Give
use
us
the
the
money?
thread. Looking at the report, how about that should we be as a nation, and how can more Nigerians in the public service be encouraged to stand upright?
Every country in the world operates by law. Those who breach the law must be made to face. There must be penalty and there must be consequence for breaching the law. We live in a country where people cannot defend their words. So until you begin, because there is nobody that is a saint. The difference between Nigerian states,
United States, you mean?
and Nigerian states, the
Okay,
difference
okay.
between Nigerian states
Okay.
and countries in Europe and North America is that you know by the time you breach the law, you go in for it. You get? So you can't expect to, because what that means, people will come and tell you at the level of local conversation. People will come and tell you, why are you saying the state is corrupt? What have you done on your own to fight corruption? But the truth is, every country in the world, the state must lead
By example.
the process
Okay.
of corruption. So long as we allow this kind of impunity, people are not made to face the law, there's nothing you can do. Right? And again, we need to raise active citizens that have the consciousness of the required knowledge to demand for accountability. No country in the world becomes better when the citizens are not active. And that's why I tell people who go about singing about electoral reform, saying we should have free, fair election, fantastic. But where the problem lies is that we must have citizens to demand accountability from the government. So long as we don't have citizens to demand this accountability, nothing works.
Absolutely.
Interesting.
I
Citizens
agree
should be
with
at the forefront
citizens'
of the
participation. They must have to come out and play their role. Breathe down on the politicians to do the right thing.
Yeah.
Okay, but as we wrap up, in 1 minute, I'll take from both of you your advice to the federal government on tackling procurement fraud in Nigeria.
We'll start
Amos.
with Amos.
I think, just as Aldo said earlier, I think full demand of accountability from all the agencies of government, including the federal government itself. Full disclosure of, since we are talking about procurement issues, I think that will go a long way in checking corruption. Full
Should we narrow it down to COVID-19 procurement? We still have a lot of the scourge, the COVID-19 issue is not away, is not gone.
Of course, it's not.
Yes.
It's not. I think if in narrowing it down, full disclosure, yeah, so everybody can see the trail of the money, where it goes from, how it ended, what was given, how was it spent. I think that will go a long way in curtailing corruption to a large extent in the public sector with regards to COVID-19 spending.
Okay, thank you so much. Full disclosure. Your last take, how do Liberty of saying?
Well, what I encourage journalists, civil society that do investigation and do public accountability, if you lay your hands on iron cast evidence, petition them to EFCC. That's what we do in our organization. I wouldn't want to mention names, but I know there are some organizations with petition to EFCC. EFCC is already squeezing them. So the investigation shouldn't just end that you've published. Do you understand me?
Yes.
Let your petition ends up in EFCC. And the Nigerian state must activate the laws. We don't just make laws. He just made mention that even the Bureau of Public Procurement, who regulate this law, even if you want it for, because I actually wanted information from them. There was a time they spent about 50-something million, I can't really remember them, to renovate their office. Do you understand? The custodian of the procurement law. And I needed them to furnish me the contract process and the payment detail. They didn't comply. They didn't answer.
You are making this sound hopeless now.
No.
But go ahead.
So the Nigerian state we must realize the laws are not just meant just for the purpose of let's our book.
Let's have the laws without implementation.
We should test all laws. We should test all laws.
Thank you so much. Does it really must go?
Please visit the news page of our website, primognews.org, and that is primognews.org for all the details of our reports and interviews. Visit our website, primog.org, to get all the information about Primog.
And you can watch our videos on Primog TV, our YouTube channel. Please subscribe to get reminders when we have a new post. We appreciate our guest, a reporter at the International Center for Investigative Reporting, ICIR, Amos Abba, and the coordinator, Media Advocacy West Africa Foundation, Audu Liberty Oseni. Thank you so much for being on today's program.
Thank you so much.
Public Conscience is supported by the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, committed to building a more just, verdant, and peaceful world. Get more information about the foundation on its website, macfound.org.
Join us again here next week for another episode of Public Conscience, and remember to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Official Primog. I am Chidozie Ogbonnaya.
And remember that birth registration and birth certificate are both free if your child is under 18. Help us to stop the corruption in the birth registration process and do not pay for birth certificates. And also remember that you can give us information or hint about corrupt acts through our phone 0902-265-6167 or info@primog.org. I am Adelbi Ubiabumo. Stay safe.